Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the stars streak past as they traveled through hyperspace toward the unknown. His hands gripped the railing as he thought about the mission ahead. Humanity was about to meet the Zephyrian Empire for the first time, and everyone knew this could change everything for the human race. The Zephyrians controlled most of this part of the galaxy. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their technology far beyond anything humans had ever created. For 200 years, they had ruled over dozens of alien species, demanding tribute and loyalty from everyone they encountered. Now it was humanity's turn to face them. Jake had been chosen to lead this mission because of his record as a diplomat and soldier. He had fought in 3 wars and negotiated peace treaties that saved millions of lives. At 35, he was young for such an important command, but the Earth Council trusted him to represent humanity well. Still, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Every day, Dr. Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad filled with her latest research. She was the mission's expert on alien cultures and biology. For the past 5 years, she had studied every piece of information about the Zephyrians that humans could find. Most of it came from refugees who had escaped from Zephyrian-controlled worlds, bringing stories of a civilization that was incredibly advanced but also cruel and rigid. Jake watched Lisa as she reviewed her notes. She was brilliant, probably the smartest person he had ever met. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the simple blue uniform of the Earth Science Corps. When she spoke about her work, her eyes lit up with excitement and curiosity. Jake found himself looking forward to their daily briefings, not just because of the important information she shared, but because he enjoyed being around her. "Commander, I have the latest cultural analysis ready," Lisa said, approaching his position near the captain's chair. "What have you learned today, Doctor?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice professional even though his heart always beat a little faster when she was nearby. Lisa activated her datapad and showed him a holographic display of Zephyrian society. Their entire civilization is based on strict hierarchy and tradition. Every Zephyrian knows exactly where they belong in society from the moment they are born. They have not had a major innovation in over 300 years because their culture prevents anyone from questioning established ways of doing things. Jake studied the display, seeing the complex web of social classes and rigid rules that govern Zephyrian life. "That sounds like it would make them predictable in negotiations." "Yes and no," Lisa replied. "They are predictable in that they will always follow their established protocols, but they also cannot adapt when faced with something new or unexpected. They simply do not know how to handle situations that their ancient rulebooks do not cover. And humans are definitely something new and unexpected," Jake said with a slight smile. Lisa smiled back, and Jake felt that familiar flutter in his chest. "Exactly. We represent everything they do not understand about the galaxy. We are young, chaotic, unpredictable, and we change constantly. To them, we probably seem like dangerous children playing with forces beyond our comprehension." Over the following days, Jake and Lisa worked closely together preparing for the encounter. They studied Zephyrian language patterns, practiced diplomatic protocols, and reviewed every piece of intelligence the human fleet had gathered. Jake found himself admiring not just Lisa's intelligence, but her dedication and courage. She was willing to risk everything to help humanity succeed in this mission. The other members of the diplomatic team respected Lisa's expertise and often came to her with questions. She always took time to explain things patiently, never making anyone feel stupid for not understanding. Jake noticed how she encouraged the younger scientists and how she worked extra hours to make sure everyone was prepared during their evening meal breaks. Jake and Lisa would sometimes sit together in the ship's observation lounge, looking out at the stars while discussing the mission. These were the moments Jake treasured most, when Lisa would relax and talk about her dreams for the future of human exploration and discovery. "I believe we have something special to offer the galaxy," Lisa said one evening as they watched a distant nebula glow in shades of purple and gold. Humans have always been explorers and innovators. We adapt to new environments and find creative solutions to problems. Maybe that is exactly what these ancient civilizations need. Jake wanted to tell her that he thought she was amazing, that her passion for discovery inspired him every day, and that he was falling in love with her brilliant mind and kind heart. But he held back, convinced that someone as intelligent and accomplished as Lisa would never be interested in a simple military officer like himself. Instead, he said, the Zephyrians might not appreciate our creative solutions. From what you have told me, they prefer order and predictability. That is exactly why this mission is so important, Lisa replied. If we can show them that change and growth are not threats but opportunities, we might be able to build a real partnership, instead of just avoiding conquest. The ship's intercom crackled to life, interrupting their conversation. All senior staff to the bridge. We are approaching the Zephyrian border. Jake and Lisa hurried to the bridge, where the crew was already preparing for the encounter. On the main screen, they could see the massive Zephyrian border station, a structure the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and sensors. Incoming transmission, reported the communications officer. Put it on screen, Jake ordered. The view screen filled with the image of a Zephyrian officer. The alien was tall and pale, with elongated features and cold, calculating eyes. When it spoke, its voice was mechanical and emotionless. Human vessel, you will follow our escort ships to Zephyros Prime. Any deviation from the prescribed course will result in your immediate destruction. You have been warned. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Lisa stepped closer to Jake and whispered, "They are testing us already, trying to establish dominance through intimidation." Jake nodded, understanding that the real challenge was just beginning. The fate of humanity might depend on how well they could navigate the complex politics and ancient prejudices of the Zephyrian Empire. As their ship followed the alien escorts toward the capital world, Jake felt the weight of billions of human lives resting on his shoulders. He glanced at Lisa, who was studying the Zephyrian ships with scientific curiosity rather than fear. Her courage gave him strength, and he silently promised himself that he would do everything in his power to protect her and ensure the success of their mission, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. The Zephyrian capital city stretched across the horizon like a glittering maze of crystal towers and floating platforms. Jake Morrison had seen many alien cities during his career, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer scale and beauty of Zephyros Prime. Every building seemed to reach toward the purple sky, connected by bridges of pure light that pulsed with energy. Lisa Carter stood beside him at the shuttle window, her datapad recording everything they saw. "Look at how organized everything is," she said quietly. "Every structure follows the same geometric patterns. There is no chaos, no random growth. It is like they planned this city 1,000 years ago and never changed a single detail." Their shuttle landed on a platform near the center of the city, where a group of Zephyrian officials waited to escort them. The aliens moved with precise, measured steps, their flowing robes making no sound against the polished floor. Jake noticed that each official wore different colored symbols on their clothing, probably indicating their rank and position in the hierarchy. The human delegation was led through corridors, lined with artwork that seemed to shift and change as they walked past. The walls themselves were alive with flowing patterns of light. But even this display of advanced technology felt cold and emotionless to Jake. Everything was beautiful but sterile, like a museum where no one was allowed to touch anything. They entered a vast chamber where the Zephyrian High Council waited. 12 tall figures sat on elevated platforms arranged in a perfect circle, their faces hidden behind masks of polished metal. At the center of the circle stood a single chair, clearly meant for the human representative. Hierarch Veltar, the leader of the council, spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber with mechanical precision. "Humans of Earth, you have come to our domain seeking recognition as equals. This is presumptuous for a species that has barely learned to leave its home star system." Jake stepped forward, keeping his voice calm and respectful. "We come seeking dialogue and mutual understanding, Hierarch. Humanity has always believed That different species can work together for the benefit of all. Pretty words, Veltar replied. But the galaxy has seen many young species with similar ambitions. Most have learned to accept their proper place in the natural order. Those who refused have been eliminated. Lisa squeezed Jake's arm gently, a signal they had practiced. She wanted him to let her speak. Jake nodded slightly, trusting her expertise. In alien cultures. Hierarch Veltar, Lisa said, stepping forward with confidence. We understand that the Zephyrian Empire has maintained order in this region for many centuries. We respect your achievements and your wisdom. We do not seek to challenge your authority, but to offer our unique perspective as a contribution to galactic civilization. Several of the council members shifted on their platforms, apparently surprised by Lisa's diplomatic approach. Veltar studied her for a long moment before responding. Dr. Carter, your research into our society has been noted. You understand US better than most outsiders. This is why we have prepared a test that will determine humanity's fate. The chamber's walls suddenly displayed images of dying worlds. Barren landscapes stretched endlessly under sickly yellow skies. What had once been fertile farmland now looked like a wasteland of cracked earth and withered plants. These are our agricultural worlds, Veltar continued. For 3 generations, they have been dying from a plague that our greatest scientists cannot cure. Entire planets that once fed billions now produce nothing but dust and decay. Our empire faces starvation within 50 years. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The images were horrifying, showing the slow death of entire ecosystems. He could see why the Zephyrians were desperate, even if they hid it behind their cold formality. If humanity can solve this crisis, Veltar announced, we will grant you full membership in our empire as equals. You will have access to our technology, our trade routes, and our protection. But if you fail, your species will submit to Zephyrian rule and serve us as all other young races have done. The council chamber fell silent. Jake realized this was likely a trap. The Zephyrians probably expected humans to fail, giving them an excuse to conquer Earth, but as he looked at Lisa, he saw something different in her eyes. She was not afraid or worried, she was excited. May we examine one of these affected worlds? Lisa asked. Our team will need to study the problem directly before we can propose any solutions. You will be given access to Kepler-7, one of our most severely damaged agricultural worlds, Veltar replied. You have 60 days to present your solution. If you succeed, humanity rises. If you fail, humanity falls. After the meeting, Jake and Lisa returned to their quarters on the UES horizon. Jake paced the small room, his mind racing with the implications of what they had just agreed to. This is impossible, he said. If their best scientists cannot solve this problem, how can we? We are walking into a trap. Lisa sat at her desk, already pulling up data from the planetary scans. Jake, think about what Veltar said. Their greatest scientists cannot solve this problem. But what if the solution requires thinking that their scientists are not capable of? What do you mean? Remember what I told you about their culture. They follow established patterns and ancient wisdom. They cannot innovate or adapt when faced with new challenges. What if this agricultural crisis requires exactly the kind of creative problem-solving that they have trained themselves not to do? Jake stopped pacing and looked at Lisa with new understanding. You think we actually have a chance? I think we have something they do not, Lisa replied with a smile. We have the ability to look at problems from completely different angles. We are not bound by their traditions or their rigid ways of thinking. Sometimes the solution to an impossible problem is to stop thinking about it the way everyone else does. The next day, their shuttle descended toward Kepler-7. The planet had once been a garden world, covered in vast fields of grain and forests of fruit trees. Now it looked like a dying ember, its surface scarred by drought and decay. As they landed near one of the abandoned research stations, Jake watched Lisa prepare her equipment with methodical precision. She was not just brilliant, he realized. She was fearless in the face of the unknown, always ready to dive into new challenges with enthusiasm and determination. Are you ready for this? Jake asked as they stepped out of the shuttle. Lisa looked out at the desolate landscape and then back at him with absolute confidence. Jake, we are about to prove that humanity belongs among the stars. I have never been more ready for anything in my life. Lisa Carter knelt in the dying soil of Kepler-7, her instruments scanning the lifeless Earth around her. The readings were worse than she had expected. The ground was not just infertile, it was actively poisoned. Whatever had caused this disaster had created a chain reaction that was killing everything it touched. Jake Morrison stood nearby, coordinating with the human research team as they set up their equipment across the former farmland. Dr. Pete Williams, their soil specialist, was shaking his head as he reviewed his initial findings. Engineer Kate Barnes was examining the massive Zephyrian terraforming machines that dotted the landscape like sleeping metal giants. "Commander, you need to see this," Kate called out from beside one of the alien devices. "These machines are still running, but they are not doing what they were designed to do." Jake and Lisa hurried over to where Kate was pointing at her scanner readings. The terraforming machine was the size of a city block, its surface covered in complex patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "The Zephyrians built these to control the planet's ecosystem," Kate explained. "They were supposed to maintain perfect growing conditions by regulating soil nutrients, water distribution, and atmospheric composition. But something went wrong." Lisa studied the data on Kate's scanner. "The machines are fighting each other. Each one is trying to enforce its own version of perfect conditions, but they are all programmed with slightly different parameters. They are creating a feedback loop that is destroying the very thing they were meant to protect." Dr. Williams joined them, his face grim. "It gets worse. The machines have been running this conflict for over 50 years. The soil is not just dead. It is chemically hostile to any form of life. Nothing can grow here as long as these systems keep fighting." Jake felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. "Can we shut them down?" "That would take years," Kate replied. "They are integrated into the planet's entire infrastructure. Shutting them down without proper preparation would cause earthquakes, floods, and atmospheric collapse. We would kill the planet trying to save it." That evening, the human team gathered in their temporary base to discuss their findings. The Zephyrian observers who had been assigned to monitor their progress sat silently in the corner, their faces showing no emotion as they listened to the humans debate possible solutions. "We need to think about this differently," Lisa said, pacing in front of a holographic display showing the planet's ecosystem. "The Zephyrians have been trying to solve this problem by building more advanced technology to control the existing systems. But what if control is the problem? What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Look at Earth," Lisa continued. "Our planet has billions of different species, all competing and cooperating in ways that are constantly changing. The system is chaotic and unpredictable, but it works because it can adapt. These Zephyrian machines are trying to create perfect order, but perfect order cannot respond to unexpected changes." Pete nodded slowly. "So you are saying we should introduce chaos into their perfect system?" "Not chaos," Lisa corrected. "Adaptability. We need to give this ecosystem the ability to change and grow on its own instead of trying to control every variable." Over the following weeks, Lisa worked with the team to develop a radical solution. Instead of trying to fix the Zephyrian machines, they would work around them. They would introduce carefully selected Earth species that could survive in the hostile environment and gradually restore natural balance. The plan was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever attempted. Instead of massive technological intervention, the humans proposed a series of small organic changes that would build on each other over time. They would plant hardy earth grasses that could break down the toxic compounds in the soil. They would introduce beneficial bacteria that could process the chemical waste from the terraforming machines. They would create small pockets of natural ecosystem that could slowly spread across the planet. The Zephyrian observers were skeptical. "This approach is primitive," one of them said during a briefing. "You are proposing to solve a technological problem with biology. It is inefficient and unpredictable." "That is exactly why it might work," Lisa replied patiently. Your technological solutions are too rigid. They cannot adapt when conditions change. But living systems are designed to adapt. They find ways to survive and thrive even in hostile environments. Jake watched Lisa explain her theories to the skeptical aliens, and he felt a surge of admiration for her brilliance and courage. She was not just proposing a solution to their problem, she was challenging their entire way of thinking about the relationship between technology and nature. As the team began implementing the restoration protocol, Jake found himself working more closely with Lisa than ever before. They spent long days in the field, monitoring the progress of their experimental plantings and adjusting their approach based on the results. During one of their evening walks through the test site, Jake noticed that small green shoots were beginning to appear in areas where they had planted the earthgrasses. The sight of life returning to the dead world filled him with hope, but it also made him acutely aware of how much he had come to depend on Lisa's presence. You were right, he said quietly. This is actually working. Lisa smiled, and the fading light of the alien sunset, Jake thought she looked more beautiful than ever. The ecosystem is finding its own balance. We just gave it the tools it needed to heal itself. Their moment of quiet satisfaction was interrupted by the arrival of a Zephyrian transport. A group of armed aliens emerged, led by a tall figure in military dress. Jake recognized him from the intelligence briefings as War Commander Thexul, leader of the Zephyrian military faction. Dr. Carter, Commander Morrison, Thexul said, his voice cold and threatening. Your experiments end now. You are corrupting our world with your primitive methods? The restoration is showing positive results, Lisa replied calmly. The soil toxicity is decreasing and native plant species are beginning to return. Your success is exactly the problem, Thexul snarled. If word spreads that humans can solve problems that we cannot, it will undermine the authority of the Empire. The natural order will be destroyed. Jake stepped protectively in front of Lisa. Are you saying you would rather let your people starve than admit that cooperation might be better than domination? Thexul's hand moved to his weapon. I am saying that some prices are too high to pay for survival. The Empire has maintained order for 1,000 years. We will not let a handful of primitive humans destroy everything we have built. As the confrontation escalated, Jake realized that their success had created a new and dangerous problem. They had proven that human methods could work, but in doing so, they had also proven that the Zephyrian way was not the only way for a civilization built on the belief in their own superiority. This was a threat that could not be tolerated. 3 months after the confrontation with War Commander Thexul, the restoration of Kepler-7 had exceeded every expectation. Green fields stretched across landscapes that had been barren wastelands just weeks before. The earthgrasses had not only survived but thrived, breaking down the toxic compounds in the soil and creating conditions where native plants could grow again. Lisa Carter stood in the middle of what had once been the most damaged area of the planet, surrounded by healthy crops that waved gently in the breeze. The Zephyrian terraforming machines still hummed in the distance, but now they worked in harmony with the natural systems instead of fighting against them. Jake Morrison approached her with a datapad containing the latest reports from across the planet. The agricultural output is now 20% higher than it was before the blight began, he said, unable to keep the amazement out of his voice. The Zephyrians are calling it a miracle. It is not a miracle, Lisa replied, kneeling to examine a flowering plant that had not grown on this world for 50 years. It is just what happens when you stop fighting nature and start working with it instead. News of the success had spread throughout the Zephyrian Empire, causing reactions that ranged from celebration to outrage. Progressive Zephyrians saw the restoration as proof that their civilization could change and grow. Conservative factions viewed it as a dangerous threat to everything they believed about their own superiority. Dr. Pete Williams jointed them with his latest soil analysis. Lisa, you need to see this. The beneficial changes are spreading faster than we predicted. The ecosystem is not just healing itself, it is becoming more resilient than it was originally. Lisa studied the data with growing excitement. The Earth? Species are not just surviving. They are adapting to local conditions and creating new symbiotic relationships with native organisms. The system is evolving in real time. Jake watched Lisa work, marveling at how she could see patterns and connections that escaped everyone else. Over the months of working together, he had come to realize that she was not just brilliant, she was visionary. Her ability to imagine new possibilities and make them real was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Their moment of scientific triumph was interrupted by an emergency communication from the UES horizon. Captain Roy Davis appeared on the portable screen, his face grave with concern. "Commander, we have a situation. War Commander Thexul has seized control of the Zephyrian Military Command. He is declaring the Restoration Project a threat to Imperial security and demanding that all humans be arrested immediately." Jake felt his blood run cold. What about Hierarch Veltar and the High Council? They are under house arrest. Thexul claims they have been corrupted by human influence and can no longer be trusted to lead the Empire. He is mobilizing the fleet to blockade Earth and force humanity into submission. Lisa stepped closer to Jake, her face pale but determined. "We need to get this information to the other Zephyrian worlds. If they understand what we have accomplished here, they might resist Thexul's coup." "That might be more important than you realize," Captain Davis continued. "Our intelligence suggests that Thexul's support is not as strong as he claims. Many Zephyrians are questioning whether the old ways are really the best ways." Over the following days, Jake found himself coordinating not just with his human crew, but with progressive Zephyrian scientists and officials who opposed Thexul's takeover. These aliens had been inspired by the success of the Restoration Project, and were ready to risk everything to protect the new partnership with humanity. Dr. Zara Vex, a young Zephyrian biologist, became one of their most valuable allies. She had been studying the restoration process and had reached the same conclusions as Lisa about the benefits of adaptive systems over rigid control. "Your species has given us something we lost long ago," Zara told Lisa during one of their planning sessions. "You have shown us that change is not always dangerous, that growth and adaptation can make us stronger instead of weaker." As they worked together to build resistance against Thexul's forces, Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing biological samples from across the Zephyrian Empire, she found evidence of a disturbing pattern. "Jake, I need to show you something," Lisa said, calling him to her laboratory late one evening. "I have been studying genetic samples from Zephyrian populations across their empire, and I found something that explains everything." She activated a holographic display showing Zephyrian genetic data spanning thousands of years. "Look at this pattern. Their genetic diversity has been decreasing steadily for centuries. They are not just culturally rigid, they are becoming biologically uniform." Jake studied the data, trying to understand the implications. "What does this mean?" "It means they are slowly going extinct," Lisa said quietly. "Their pursuit of perfection and order has eliminated the genetic variation that drives evolution and adaptation. They have become so efficient and specialized that they cannot change when faced with new challenges." The revelation was staggering. The Zephyrian Empire, for all its technological might and cultural superiority, was a dying civilization. Their inability to innovate was not just a cultural problem, it was a biological one. "That is why they could not solve the agricultural crisis," Lisa continued. "The solution required the kind of flexible thinking that their species has bred out of itself. They need us not because we are superior, but because we still have the diversity and adaptability that they have lost." Jake realized that this information could change the entire conflict. If the Zephyrian people understood that their survival depended on embracing change and diversity, they might reject Thexul's rigid traditionalism. "We need to get this information to Zara and the other progressives," Jake said. "Already done?" Lisa replied. "I sent the data to every major research facility in the Empire. The truth is spreading faster than Thexul can suppress it." Within hours, the genetic analysis was being discussed throughout Zephyrian space. Progressive factions used it to argue that cooperation with humanity was not just beneficial but essential for their species' survival. Conservative groups denounced it as human propaganda, but their arguments became weaker as more Zephyrian scientists confirmed Lisa's findings. The crisis came to a head when the HFY's fleet arrived at Kepler-7 intent on destroying the restoration project and arresting the human team. But as his ships approached the planet, they were met by a fleet of Zephyrian vessels loyal to the progressive cause. Jake found himself standing on the bridge of a Zephyrian cruiser, working alongside alien officers who had chosen to fight for change rather than submit to the old ways. The battle for the future of both species was about to begin, and he knew that everything they had worked for hung in the balance. The space battle above Kepler-7 lasted only 3 hours, but it changed the course of galactic history. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian cruiser Starwing, watching as War Commander the HFY's forces retreated in disorder. The progressive Zephyrian fleet had fought with a determination and creativity that surprised everyone, including themselves. Captain Nexara, the Zephyrian commander of the Starwing, turned to Jake with something that might have been a smile on her. Alien features. Your tactical suggestions proved most effective, Commander Morrison. The HFY's forces were not prepared for adaptive strategies. Jake nodded, still amazed that he had been fighting alongside aliens just months after first meeting them. Your people learned quickly. That willingness to try new approaches is exactly what will save your civilization. Down on the planet's surface, Lisa Carter was coordinating the evacuation of research personnel when the news of victory arrived. Dr. Zara Vex rushed into the command center, her usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious excitement. Lisa, it is over. The HFY has surrendered and Hierarch Veltar has been restored to power. The High Council is calling for an emergency session to discuss the future of human-Zephyrian relations. Lisa felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it. Not only had they solved the agricultural crisis, but they had helped prevent a civil war and opened the door to a new era of cooperation between their species. 2 weeks later, the Grand Ceremony Hall on SciFiPrime was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds. Hierarch Veltar stood at the center of the vast chamber, his voice carrying clearly through the advanced audio systems as he addressed the assembled delegates. Today marks the beginning of a new age for our empire, Veltar announced. We have learned that true strength comes not from rigid adherence to ancient ways, but from the wisdom to grow and adapt when faced with new challenges. Jake and Lisa sat in the front row with the rest of the human delegation, watching as the Hierarch formally announced the new partnership between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. The agreement granted humans full citizenship rights throughout Zephyrian space while establishing joint research programs to address the genetic diversity crisis that threatened the alien civilization. The humans have taught us that diversity is not weakness but strength, Veltar continued. Their success in healing our worlds proves that different approaches to problem solving can achieve what conventional methods cannot. We welcome them, not as subjects or servants, but as partners in building a better future for all species. The ceremony concluded with the signing of the Kepler Accords, a treaty that established the framework for human-Zephyrian cooperation. Jake watched Lisa add her signature to the historic document, her hand steady despite the magnitude of the moment. That evening, a celebration was held in the gardens of the Imperial Palace. Representatives from both species mingled freely, discussing plans for joint exploration missions and cultural exchange programs. The atmosphere was one of hope and excitement for the possibilities that lay ahead. Jake found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the alien city, thinking about how much had changed since their arrival. The mission that had begun as a desperate attempt to avoid conquest had become the foundation for a new galactic alliance. Lisa joined him on the balcony, carrying 2 glasses of Zephyrian wine. The alien beverage tasted like starlight and honey, and Jake felt himself relaxing for the first time in months. We did it, Lisa said quietly, looking out at the lights of the city below. We actually did it. You did it, Jake corrected. Your Insights about their culture, your solution to the agricultural crisis, your discovery about their genetic decline? None of this would have been possible without you. Lisa turned to face him, and in the soft light of the alien moons, Jake thought he saw something in her eyes that made his heart beat faster. Jake, I could not have done any of this alone. Your leadership, your willingness to trust my ideas, even when they seemed crazy, your courage in the face of impossible odds, we did this together. For months, Jake had been struggling with his feelings for Lisa, convinced that someone of her brilliance would never be interested in a simple soldier like himself. But now, standing here in the aftermath of their shared triumph, he realized that he could not let fear hold him back any longer. Lisa, there is something I need to tell you, Jake began, his voice suddenly uncertain. During this entire mission, I have been amazed by your intelligence and your courage. You inspire everyone around you to be better than they thought possible. What I'm trying to say is that I have fallen in love with you. Lisa stepped closer to him, her eyes sparkling with amusement and affection. Jake Morrison, are you trying to ask me to marry you? Jake's words caught in his throat. He had been building up to a confession of his feelings, but Lisa had somehow seen straight through to the heart of what he really wanted to say. I know it seemed sudden, and I know you could have anyone you wanted, but yes, I guess I am asking you to marry me. Lisa smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. Yes, she said simply. I thought you would never ask. Jake stared at her in amazement. You mean you have been waiting for me to propose? Jake, I have been in love with you since our second week aboard the Horizon. Lisa laughed. I was beginning to think I would have to propose to you myself. They kissed under the alien stars, and Jake felt as though his heart might burst with happiness. Around them, the celebration continued, but for that moment, the rest of the universe seemed to fade away. 6 months later, their wedding was held aboard the UES Horizon, with guests from both human and Zephyrian space in attendance. Hierarch Veltar himself performed part of the ceremony, noting that the union between Jake and Lisa symbolized the new partnership between their civilizations. Dr. Zara Vex served as Lisa's maid of honor, while Captain Davis stood as Jake's best man. The ceremony blended human and Zephyrian traditions, creating something entirely new that honored both cultures. During his speech at the reception, Veltar addressed the assembled guests with words that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. Today we celebrate not just the union of two remarkable individuals, but the triumph of cooperation over conflict, of love over fear, and of hope over despair. The humans have shown us that our greatest strength lies not in our technology or our weapons, but in our ability to reach across the void and find common ground with those who are different from ourselves. As Jake and Lisa danced to music that blended human melodies with Zephyrian harmonies, they looked out at the stars through the ship's observation windows. Somewhere out there, new worlds were waiting to be explored. New civilizations were waiting to be discovered, and new challenges were waiting to be overcome. Together, they were ready for whatever the universe might bring.